Rosie, Billy, Rocky and the breakdown coach. Rosie and Billy had been very naughty yesterday, and the Fat Controller decided to let them out today, and they decided to be really good engines and never falling out, so they decided to play together. But meanwhile, however, Molly, Hank and Edward did not like this at all. They were feeling very furious. How could the Fat Controller do such a thing? said Hank. Well, these two engines have been causing trouble yesterday. Well, that reminded me, said Molly, that remember when you had the punishment of your controller? Oh, it was for sure. And there were and we had no point taking punishments back to my old railway and Dennis's old railway, continued Molly. Just then the three engines asked the Fat Controller. Well, said the Fat Controller, it's because this morning I saw them feeling sad and miserable and pitiful, and I had to let them out before, otherwise I won't keep it down, he said. Well, that's not fair, said Edward. He's the punishment when the engines need to be punished, he said. And with that, this morning Rosie and Billy were excited when they got out of the shed, but then they decided to look at new things and old things, what they never tried out before. But the Fat Controller, however, haven't found out yet, but because they weren't being naughty and anything like that, they were enjoying themselves. They went into the yards to see Rocky, and behind Rocky was the yellow breakdown coach. What's that? Said Rosie. Where? Said Rocky. That yellow coach, said Billy. Oh, behind me, next to me, said Rocky, is. Now this coach, said Rocky, is the breakdown coach. It takes workmen to the rescue where there is any accident, and I am the only, and the breakdown. Thousands of the breakdown cranes and I are the only cranes by lifting trains, coaches and trucks and diesels and everything heavier like that, said Rocky. Well, really, said Rosie. Yes, really, said Rocky. But then there was trouble. They heard a loud whistling noise. They heard a loud whistle. There was Luke in trouble of the trucks. Help! Said Luke. He was frightened, and his brake blocks were on fire, and the trucks were pushing him too fast. And now he disappeared into the sharp bend where they're gonna make him meet his end. They're pushing me, said Luke. On, laughed the trucks, but it was too late. Luke came off the rails, and so did his tender too. Luke came off the rails, and the tree fell down, and poor Luke and his two tenders were derailed, and so were the trucks. Luke and the trucks were really hurt, and his second tender coupling between his two tenders was broken. The alarm went on, and just then, the yard manager came in. Luke is off the line, he said. I want the both of you to take the breakdown coach to send the workmen to save him quickly, he said. And so they did. And also, Billy had the breakdown coach, and Rosie had Rocky, and at last they were ready to the rescue. And they were ready to rescue their friend. They felt sorry for him. Luke stood there feeling sad and upset and miserable. "Never mind, Luke," said his driver. "It wasn't your fault, it was the trucks and your brake blocks. That is why it sort of did all this." "Yes," said Luke sadly, and just then the two engines were finally there and the wreckage was clear. While Rocky and Billy, with the breakdown coach, were clearing up the mess, Rosie was cross with them and determined to be like Thomas, like what Thomas was like with James, for what happened to James on his first day on Sodor. And now it really happened. And now it really happened. And now it really happened to Luke. "That reminded us of James," said the trucks, and with that they were really upset. "This will teach you a lesson, this will teach you a lesson," said Rosie. Yes it will," said the trucks, and Rosie banged them hard. She was really angry with them and was pretending and was determined not to be like Gordon. The next day, the two tank engines were ready to be prepared. Rocky was ready to lift the mighty Luke, the double tender engine, back onto the rails. And at last, Luke was back on the rails. And with that, Rocky was ready to be taken home. And at last, the two engines brought Luke home too. Luke couldn't move, so the two engines had to help him. The two engines were really useful and sensible, and the Fat Controller was proud with him. "Welcome back, Luke, and well done, Billy and Rosie. You two are really useful engines. Now you two will have a day off." "Thank you, sir," they said. And Luke, you will finally go to the works to be mended and have 4 new numbers changed on your second tender. "Thank you, sir," said Luke. Billy and Rosie were finally chosen to have a day off, and just then there was Bash and Stepney, feeling excited for them. I'm glad you guys were heroes," said Bash. "I know," said We know, said Billy and Rosie, "and we were really useful engines too," said Rosie. "Yeah," said Stepney, "we know that. The Fat Controller knows the both of you are really useful engines." But while they were talking, they can hear Murdoch's whistle, and there was Murdoch with his branch line coaches on his branch line, and always while the four engines are talking, Murdoch always goes peep peep, hello, and steams along the track. Phew, and wow, isn't he that so fast? But is he really? Yes, and all the engines agreed, even Bash and Billy and Rosie behind Billy.